Right, okay. So this is my NEA so far. Um, so this is the first thing that I made. It's just the simple traffic light one that I showed you in class. They just loop through, they just go through, and then if it's a red light, they stop. And then if it's green, they go again, and they stop when they queue. So that's the first thing I made. So in here we've got basically just the class, and then each one's got properties. So X position, Y position, and then the rect is just the boundary for its image, and then XP is sort of like velocity, so that's what it adds on each time it loops around. And then if it gets to off the end of the screen, basically take off 1100 pixels, so it goes back to the start. And then here, so this is the function move for each one. This is when it's initiated, each object, so each car. And then if statement here, if so SGN is like the sign, the signal. So if it's green or if it's amber, then move like normal, add XP, which is the velocity that's going at, which is declared later on. That's absolutely fine. If it's red, but the X position is greater than where the light is, so if it's gone past the light, basically keep going. If it's more than the light, if it's more than 700, so the light is at 750, but slightly before the light, so if it's 50 pixels before the light, then stop. Otherwise, so dist A here is the distance between itself, so its X position, take away the car in front's X position, so the distance to the car in front essentially. So if it's greater than minus 200 and less than 200, so if it's 200 in between the two, then stop, so don't add the velocity, don't add the change in pixels. So stop there, and then otherwise just keep going like usual. And then class for signal, even though there's only one signal at the moment, so when it's initiated it just loads itself, and then that's the image there, green initially, and then obviously the image center, and then a function here, changing sign, it just loads the colour, so loads whatever is in here, and I've got that down here, so either green or yellow or red. And then so this is the main program here. The clock is just to know how fast to update the screen, how many frames. The game window here, which passes through width and height, which are global variables, which is probably not ideal, but that's just what I did initially. And the caption, so the initial velocity, or the only velocity because it's an accelerate, is 100, and that's like the X coordinate also. So this one will start at 100, and then this one will start 200 pixels later, and then a little bit after that, and a little bit after that. And then I've grouped all cars, so signal 1 is signal. All cars is a group of 1, 2, 3, 4 cars. And I've done the same here for signal, but I don't really have to because there's only one. So the signal counter is obviously 0 first of all because it's green, and then increments here when you click. So this is all runs in a while loop. So when you click, it just adds 1 and loops through, changing the image that it's on. So sorry, the velocity is 2 here. For each one, to add 2 pixels each time it loops through, and it just moves each car, and it draws them all down here at the bottom together. And then if event type is quit, then it just closes the game. Fills the frame with white, draws all the cars, draws all the signals, updates the screen, does that straight away, so when it's main. And that's the first thing that I made. So the second thing that I moved on to doing was, so I've got 3 versions of that, but they're all pretty much the same. And the second thing I was doing is getting them to accelerate and decelerate, which is still not perfect, but it's, so this is the same program essentially, that they move but they accelerate, and they accelerate on this equation. So it's probably an easier way of understanding the equation. So up here you've got the maximum speed, it's the minimum speed, take away the maximum speed, sorry, take away the minimum, which is obviously just 0, so it's 30 take away 0. I've set the speed limit to 30, and then the minimum speed here again, I mean sorry, the median speed, I think the middle speed, and then the power here is how it's the rate of acceleration. So if you change that, it'll either be steeper or it'll be less steep. And this is basically, so when you set go, the acceleration will loop through. There's quite a gap here where they don't move at all, and then suddenly they'll accelerate a little bit, and then they'll speed up, and then they'll slow down. So this is velocity here, if you imagine, and time here, so it shows the acceleration. And then because there's a gap in between here, I was going to use this as the sort of like the reaction time. So if you add a little bit on, so if you randomly choose a value between like 2 and 4, let's say, and that gives sort of a random reaction time for each car, so it's sort of more realistic, but I haven't actually implemented that yet. They all run on this red line here, and it's got it to print the speed so you can see that more clearly. So the equations basically gets here, and it runs on a timer that resets. So you've got time.time is the time right now, so it'll keep getting that, and then start time it passes through before, so that's like start, and then it'll do the difference in between. It's basically just a timer that increments. So timer that goes along here, and that's how it calculates the speed that it's going at that time. So if we run this, the acceleration's okay, but the deceleration and the stopping is not at the moment, so it goes up, as you can see on this one, at the rate of the graph. So it gets to 28 and 29, and it'll never quite reach 30 obviously, so maybe I can increase that a tiny bit so it does reach 30. But then it should decelerate to 10 or 15, I think I set it to, but that needs to be changed because at the moment it's almost instantaneous, so it's not really a slow deceleration, it's pretty much instant decelerate to 15 miles an hour, as you can see. So it goes instantly to 15, which I need to fix, and then to stop, I need to change the stopping distance, but they do stop when it gets to red. I don't know if you can see, but the acceleration is, they do decelerate, but it's not very not very slow, it's pretty quick. But then when you press green they go through the loop again and they start accelerating again. So I'm going to fix the deceleration. So I've got another graph for deceleration and the stopping obviously, because they don't properly all move up together, and that needs to be fixed. But it's basically the same program as before, except they've got XP I've just changed to velocity because it makes more sense, and then xval, which is the basically the time, so the x on the graph if you imagine that, and then a stopping boolean there is how I've done it. And then basically I've just got that here, so it loops through again, same thing. So if it's green it just goes, but instead of adding the speed it'll add, it calculates the velocity each time from the graph, from the equation of the graph. If it's amber it decelerates here to 15 pixels added on each second, each sort of time it's calculated, so each time it loops through. And then if it's red and it's in front, so if it needs to stop, if it's red and it's in front of the lights, then it'll stop. Otherwise, no, sorry, if it's greater than 600, less than 800, so if it's gone past the lights, then it won't stop. And then if it's otherwise, it will stop here, and it will reset the timer. So the graph basically, once it's stopped, just sets time back to 0, and then it will iterate through again, so it will keep going up again. And then yeah, that's that. And then class for signal again, even though there's only one signal. Same thing here, all the cars drawn on there, moved here, and they're all drawn together down here, and so the signal, even though there's only one. And that's that one pretty much. And then the second thing I've got, the third thing, sorry, is I think one of them I put a menu on. I think probably the first one, I'll just put a little menu. So I was going to have run simulation and then whatever, so change the properties or whatever other boxes I was going to have. So obviously if you don't click on the button, it won't run. If you do, it does. God, there's zoom on. And then the third thing I've got is a T-junction scenario. And this one I've properly commented on, so if you look through it, you can understand what it means by the text here. So we've got class car again. This one's got a lot more properties for each car. So it's got change in X, change in Y, rectangle same as before, velocity same as before, the angle that it's facing in radians, and the angle that's facing in degrees. I've done that just so it's easier for me to understand, because otherwise if you're just dealing in radians, it's a little bit hard to get your head around which way it's actually facing. But maybe I can change that, make it more efficient later on. And then this is basically a flag to say if it goes left or right. So random integer 0, which later on you see zeros, what you see here. If it's 0, it does the function turn left. If it's 1, it does the function turn right. And this is the flag basically that's raised if it's safe to turn each time. And then the property of its name, so which is actually a number, so an integer. So car 3 is his name is integer 3, if that makes sense. And then so function move passes through self, so all the properties here. Name, so its name, like I've just said, the integer. Car 1, which actually let me run this first so you can understand. Car 1, which is the top one here, so car 1's the one going from left to right, and car 2 is the one going from right to left, and then car 3 and 4 are these two. And it passes through car X as well, which is basically the car in front, so the other car to this one. And then yeah, so if the turn left thing's 0, it turns left. If it's 1, it turns right. So the function for turn left, these two lines basically mean it keeps self.rect, so the boundary of the image, but basically just syncs it with its actual x coordinate each time it draws it, and then so adding on its position to the left is the change in x, dx, and adding on its position to the top is change in y, dy. And then the way that I've got it to rotate the car is that it loads in the image each time, and then so it's like temporarily loads it in here, and then it rotates it with the image here. That's the only way I found that I can do it. Maybe I'll look into finding sort of more efficient way of doing that, because to load in this image each time it draws it, it's probably not the most efficient thing to do, but that's the way I've done it at the moment. And then this just calculates the angle in degrees from the angle in radians, so 180 divided by pi times by angle in radians. And then y dist car x, basically the y distance to the car in front, so car x, the car in front, and it takes its y position, whichever car it's going to, take away the car in front's y position, and just the same for x, so you know how far away the other car is in terms of x and y. And then, so because it's turning left, so once, yeah, there you go, once it's turned left, you get to a position on the x, and that'll do this function reset position, so put it back down here somewhere, and it'll come back through, look, either go left or right, and that passes through just name. And then this means if it's, so if the distance, if the y distance to the car in front is positive, and if it's less than 175, and if it's within 50 of the x, then it is too close and it won't move. So that's that. And then we've got if it's not facing to the left, so if its angle is not 180, so the car image itself faces to the right, so 180 degrees of that image will be facing to the left, and it's got to that point in the road, so it got to 300, which is this line here where it can turn, and then so if it's not going to crash into car 2, which is the car that moves along this road, car 2 here, so if it's not going to crash into that one, then set the flag that it's safe to turn, so adds 1 to that, so it sets that it's true basically, so it can turn. And then we've got if it's greater than 300, so if it's further than this line here, then keep going up basically, take away 3. And then yes, that's that, so keep going until it's got to the point where it turns. And at the moment the turning is not, obviously you can see, it's very, well, they do a handbrake turn each time they turn. So it's not perfect, I need to fix that. But they do, it's because they get to here and they turn very sharply. There needs to be a more smoother turn, but I can fix that. So if it's not got to this point, then keep going up. And if the flag that it's safe to turn is set, and it's not facing, and it's facing less than 180, so if it's not facing to the left, then increase the angle, so increase the amount that is facing to the left basically, and do the function that draws that. And then if it's not got to 265, so basically if it's not got to like here in the road, then keep coming up, so it gets up to here, and then turns. And it's the exact same for turn right, except for obviously it turns right. And there's another check, so it checks if it's not going to crash into car 2, and it's not going to crash into car 1, and car 1 is this one, so it's not going to crash into that one or that one, then it's safe to turn. It sets the flag to true and it turns. The reset positioning, like I said, once the car gets up to here and turns either left or right, once it's gone off the screen, they'll do this function which just basically sort of respawns it back down here. So it sets the is it safe to turn flag to 0, so it's not safe to turn because it hasn't checked. Angle 90, so from facing to the right, 90 to the left will face it upwards. And then changing X is 0, changing Y is 0. The X position is 415 across. Its name is just name, it's just reset. If it's named through, so if it's car 3, self-name is name, so sorry, it passes through name, which is passed in from here, which is passed in from the bottom, I'll show you in a second. So if it's car 3, then it's X, if it's Y position is -1000, which is somewhere down here, and then if it's car 4, if it's the one after that, it'll be a bit further down, just so it doesn't, so they don't get muddled up, if that makes sense. So there's enough distance in between that they won't overlap. Obviously they do the distance in between them. And I've done another one for car 5. If I add another car in the future, if I keep adding more, which I will, then then it will spawn further down. And then it does the function again to decide whether it goes left or right. So obviously left, like I said, left is 0 is left and 1 is right. So it does that, which is here. So choose a random integer between 0 and 1, and it returns that. And then this is for the angle. This is for the sort of X position and Y position as it turns around that angle. So you've got cos of the angle times by the velocity that's going, which is 5, I've just put through. And then same for Y, so it'll just go either over to the left or over to the right, and it returns all those values once it's changed them. And then the move straight position function is only for car 1, so it's got X position here, and it just keeps adding to the X position, so it goes across from left to right. And then move straight neg is for car 2, so it goes from right to left, keeps taking away basically. And then we've got image flip 180, image flip 90. I don't think I actually use image flip 90, but I do use image flip 180 here. So because the initial image of the car is facing to the right, it does this function which just basically rotates it 180 degrees, if you see that. So that's only for car 2, as you can see here, it just flips 180 degrees, so it's facing to the left, so that it makes sense when it's moving. And then we've got the clock, which is just how many times a second it updates the screen, so the frames per second basically is what that is. and then the frame, which still passes through width and height, which are global variables, and the caption, which is also, which I should probably change. And then the initial X and Y position, this is only used for car 3 and car 4, just so they start actually on the road. And then I've grouped them all together here, and obviously we don't have any traffic lights, so I've not got that in. And then while true, so this is always looping through. Move car 1 to the right, move car 2 to the left, so you see there you go, across the screen left and right. Car 3 move is the function that decides whether they go left or right, draws that. And then the event here, if it's the event is Pygame quit, so if you click close, it basically closes the game. And then blitz on the background, draws on the background, it draws all the cars, updates the screen, and it does that straight away. And that's basically the end result is here. So the next thing I need to do is to add the acceleration and deceleration into this, and then after that I'll put basically just combine this with the other one that's got acceleration and deceleration, so that it'll have traffic lights and these sort of rules that it's got in itself if it's safe to turn, to recreate the one in Godalming, which is basically just this, but with traffic lights as well, and obviously lots more lanes and directions and things. But I've still got quite a bit to go. But sort of the main properties, that the main sort of basic bits are there, and the actual formula and stuff are all there. It's just putting it all together and getting the angles sort of, probably that's probably going to be a hard part to recreate the one in Godalming. But that's what I've done so far. And obviously I've had lots of different attempts, I've saved different versions of each one. So that's, all these are acceleration. And then this one's the T-junction 3 version of that. And that's the first one. And that's that. Right, thank you very much.